Yes. Um, this types of voter fraud? Yeah. Could you get me every voter for the last 40 years? Yes. Now, there's what's known as the false registration. Voting under fraudulent voter registrations that either use a phony name and a real or fake address or claim. Then there's impersonation fraud. There's duplicate voting, fraudulent use of absentee ballots, illegal assistance at the polls, ballot petition fraud. Oh, now I'm going to want to know all those voters in each and every state, yes, and all of them that have to register to vote. Now you would say, why? Let's say, yes, they found out that I did sue you as elected judges in every superior court. Yes, there could have been some fraud involved. Yes, it could have. I just want to know the voters of the United States. See, I mentioned a third party called the Citizens Party. Yes. And then in well, no, I want the signatures of all registrations and the actual GPS location of every voter of the United States. See, as soon as you decide to lose, I'm going to sue you, judges. And every time I sue a judge for having any knowledge of fraud, yes, I'm going to ask the voters, well, do you think it was a fair election? Pooch. Now, it could be one of these $100 billion, it could be a big lawsuit for electing a judge that knowingly did have the understanding of fraud, forgery, and kidnapping. Now, I mentioned Secretary of State. Yes, he did. That you should not have not accredited, not qualified. You should not have approved the elections when having not. Excuse me, Secretary of State of Washington State, as you should not have verified the results of the election when this county did have knowledge of forgery or fraud. Yes, spoliation. Mm-mm. Now, the state's getting sued for $200 billion. I'm suing each of the superintendents of schools right now. Pooch, are you elected to that position, officer? Now, I'm going to want to know every voter in every county and the signatures on all voter registrations. Yes, everywhere in the United States for the last 40 years. Now, it looks to me that we have quite a few individuals in office, yes, that could have been sued years ago. Jenny. And instead of enforcing the laws, you decided that you would play I don't know, and then voters voted for somebody that was ineligible for office because of your obstruction of my rights as a father. Now, you've been having me, well, I'm going to want to know all voter advised funds, yes, and every voter of the United States. Because every time I sue a judge, yes, and then they're removed from office for having any knowledge of this aiding and abetting, accessories to the crime, ooch, malicious harassment, hate crimes, civil rights violations. I will sue each county in each state that verified the actual election results. Did you want to keep gambling? Civil rights coordinators, do any of you recognize that there are no due process rights to myself or my sons? They never had anybody legally qualified to represent them in court. The dissolution of marriage. Now, I told you that I want custody of them. Yes. And I will sue each and every county of the United States for the verification of any election. Sheriff. Mm-mm. Judge Rohr, were you elected to office at the time of the jury trial? Did you not understand parenting plan yesterday? Order for support, yes. findings and fact and conclusions of the law. Why is it that you thought that I would motion a court, yes, that violated every right that I have as a father? You never obligated the petitioner, yes, to produce any documentation that I got notice of court hearings, yes. See, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. There's a possibility of inheritances, yes. Then there's the possibility of my private property that has nothing to do with money. Am I missing some documentation, some lawsuits that I need to sign? Amounted to taking of the land by the city in violation of the Constitution, which says, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Did you take my sons for public use without me getting paid for it? Did you pay to kidnap them? Were you bribed to issue court orders thinking that it was a show? Ouch. See, this law of succession, yes, considers how property is passed along from one generation to another. The American legal system recognizes a person's right to dispose of his or her property as he or she wishes. Then there's the deceased person's heirs. Yes, the intestate process. Oh, his or her nearest relatives. Now, I would say that's my five sons. Pooch. Now, these conditions necessary for entering into a marriage are spelled out by state law. Yes. What conditions were necessary for us to get married in the United Nations? Oh, they were spelled out by the United Nations. I'm going to sue you in the International Court of Law. Oh, I'm going to want all donor funds. Yes. Now, I know you said, no, we're not going to let you do it. I'm going to do it. Yes, he is. Now, look at here, the Supreme Court of the United States. And November 8th of 2000, the president with Associate Justice Brett Kavanaugh and the other members of the Supreme Court in the Justices Conference Room. Looks nice in there, doesn't it? Yes, it does. Yes. Now let's see here, from left to right. Neil Gorsuch. Yes. And then there's Sotomayor. Pooch. There's Stephen Breyer. And then there's Clarence Thomas. Yes, there is. Chief Justice John G. Roberts. Then there's the president and his wife. Yes. And then Associate Justice Kavanaugh. Mrs. Ashley Kavanaugh, his beautiful wife, and then Samuel Alito and Elena Kagan. Oh, do you as judges have any law? What are you doing, Brett? Elena? John? Oh, what are you doing? Did you think you'd win? Were you sitting there for the last 3.5 years right now? You're getting sued, Supreme Court of the United States. I'm going to have you removed from the Supreme Court. Do you understand? Now, where's Ginsburg in the picture? Poop, poop. Thomas, yeah. Sotomayor, Stephen Breyer. Now, how is it that the United States of America right now? Could you get me your actual income for the last 40 years? Yes. And all donor advised funds where you're going to give? Ouch. Because you're so wealthy, Supreme Court Justice. I'm going to take your assets. I'm going to have you put in prison. Do you understand? I'm going to have you put in prison. Now, I want my sons. Yes. They handed me the winning ticket that has forgeries on it. Or the petitioner, yes, did not have any legal representation of the minors named. Yes. And I'm going to want to sue that Supreme Court justices. So why don't you just have my sons, yes, contact me, yeah, because I'd like to reside with them. Oh. And I know it's important. It really is, because you cannot violate the Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution. Now, this, oh my gosh, what time is it? Oh, There's a couple questions I had. This was The Economist, February 9th of 2019. Yes. Some economic data. Oh my gosh. Some markets. Yes. Now, I noticed that some of the world seems to be having some problems. Now, well, just looking at, I did actually read through this. There was some concerns. There's some big numbers here. In Argentina, they're down 47.4% on their currency. Did they devalue their currency again, or did the dollar increase? Now, every country, Argentina and Brazil, yes, down 11%. And then there's, who's this here? Pakistan, yes, currency is down 20%. Oh, see, it says currency units 1 year ago, the change, yes. And then in Turkey, they're down 27.6%. Yes. And in Sweden, yes, and Russia, oh, and Norway, and Denmark, oh, is that the strong dollar policy? Could you get me the governments where their currency seems to be devaluing against the strength of the United States dollar? And their oaths, their badges, their attorneys. Now, I know it seems mean to sue those nations where their currency is.